Hello and welcome to today's live stream. And my guest today, I'm very excited. We're going to be talking about IT and sales. But of course, a lot of what we're going to be talking around the consultative approach doesn't just relate to IT. So welcome, Hamish. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to, what you do. Hamish is a previous client of mine as well.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. Thanks for that, Sarah. And it's great to come on board, and thanks for the invitation. So for myself, I've been in IT sales now for just over 15 years. So I've worked with a number of customers, predominantly focusing into the mid-market as well as into the enterprise space. So I've had a lot of opportunity to talk to C-level management as well as operational staff. And so my role is very much more from a consultancy approach in regards to selling as well as managing the accounts.
Okay.
Yep.
And so that's great. And if we think about, you've got a broad range then of knowledge and experience over time. So if we think about what works, what doesn't maybe work as well, or what can even just be improved, we can always turn the dial up. And I know that, even with me, when I'm selling and I'm even about my own things, I'm always very conscious that I can continue to improve. So maybe what we could start is thinking about like when you're going into that meeting, what's the approach? What do you see working? What doesn't work so well? I'm a big fan of connecting and then carrying with people, but tell me what you think.
Okay, thank you. So when I'm meeting a customer, regardless of whether they're a manager or if they're in C-level management, I generally try to put myself into that person's shoe. So I understand that they're meeting me because there is a problem or there's an issue or they believe there's a service I can provide that could address something. So when I meet with the customer, initially that you're always going to have that little small chat, but then when the meeting genuinely kicks in, I try as much as I can to put myself into his shoe and try to understand the problems that that person's facing. So with my experience on IT, I understand their roles and responsibilities. I understand that they may have a small team or a large team, or they might have different partners. So a lot of probably the first 5-10 minutes are really asking open-ended questions to try and really understand what's driving the person to actually have this meeting with me.
Yeah. And tell me about from your perspective about the listening side, because I know I deal with a lot of clients in this space, and often just even through enthusiasm or that desire to help, or even sometimes they may be nervous when they're meeting this new, particularly if they're a high level person, they actually don't listen all that well. And it's a weird one because we might all go, well, actually, we're pretty good listeners. But surprisingly, when we get into a situation, for any of those reasons, we can actually talk too much. And it's like, we need to leave all that space for those people to say, okay, this person's actually listening to me. Would you agree with that open-ended question?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I've seen that so many times in my career with different businesses where salespeople, whether they feel that they're either nervous or if they feel that they need to impress the person or the audience, they would generally try to talk a lot in the meeting. And whilst that's impressive because you're able to demonstrate your knowledge, what happens, I feel, is that the audience doesn't feel that they've been heard or that they've been understood in regards to their situation. So I do feel that whilst it's great to show that level of information, you miss the opportunity to really unpack the main problem or their why, which I feel that they would probably appreciate a lot more.
Yeah, that is so true. And yes, and it depends on personality, but a lot of people do just talk too much. And I guess what we're really after here, if you think about the client perspective, is what they really want to know is, does this person get it? Do they get
Mm-hmm.
me? You know, are they connecting to me? And I have this obsession, as you may know, about connection, because I just think it's more important than almost anything else. And it will only, you'll only get that relational trust, right? If people feel that you actually are willing to listen to them. And there's nothing more annoying than feeling like, oh, I don't feel this person really gets me. And then we shut down. We're far less likely to go ahead, aren't we? You know.
I always take the approach that when you're walking into a meeting, there is no trust currently. So you have to earn the trust. And the best way to do that is to really be able to sit there and listen, and feel free to repeat it back to the customer. Just to clarify, are you saying this? Just so that the customer is able to understand that this person is really trying to understand me. And then you can see that you're kind of bringing him on that journey to a destination, as opposed to trying to enforce your views into the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing I noticed is that you're saying him. Is that because you are you usually dealing with men? I'm assuming it'll be somewhere.
Mostly, there's a percentage of females in the IT. So sorry, I just gravitate towards them because probably more dominant.
More dominant. Yeah, absolutely. In IT, I'd certainly know that would be generally the case. Definitely, it's that sense of empathy, isn't it? So this person's listening. So if we think about what then works, like what works. What have you seen going wrong? Because I know that you've spoken to me in the past about you've got a meeting that goes for a set amount of time, and you've actually heard businesses just pitching for most of that time and not allowing that space. So that's definitely not working. What else do you see kind of once you're moving in and just starting to build that trust? I love that idea you say about actually repeating back to them, and also using their language, like mirroring back their language. I always listen for metaphors. Because they're like a shortcut often to how people are really feeling about something. And if you use their metaphor back to them, subconsciously, they probably won't even know that you've done it, but subconsciously they'll go, this person's really listening. Once you then get into more of the conversation, then what do you see going well or not so well?
I feel that what goes well is that after you've had that conversation with that person, and they've shared, and you've been able to understand why they're currently having that meeting with you. It could be a technical issue, it could be a service problem. But once you are able to move beyond that, then I feel that you're able to then talk into that situation. So in a scenario with an IT or a manager, I would often say that, I can appreciate that because I've dealt with another customer where they had very tight resources and there's a lot of pressure on them from the business, from a technical standpoint, but now you've got problems with governance, compliance, and risk. So it's really trying to just say that, look, I truly understand the challenges that you're facing. But let me give you a scenario that has actually worked in the past with other customers, and this is how we've done that. So it's really partnering with the customer, and you kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of bring the wall down between the two, and the person becomes more, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but more willing to be engaged in the conversation, where you can really see the emotional side behind that person. And then once you're able to tap into that, then it's, yes, we're having an open conversation now.
Yes, I love that. And you're right. I mean, even though you might not use the word vulnerable, it's about being real, isn't it?
Definitely.
And no one's going to do that, particularly in a business setting, if they don't feel comfortable. So it's building those cues and exactly as you say, you're co-creating. You're not just the expert. It's like, well, I can show you this, and then you might see how this fits with what your scenario is. And there's this sense that they have ownership as well, because I think a lot of, and I'm seeing some great comments coming up on the screen. Yeah, thank you for the comments. It's always much appreciated, and happy to answer questions as well. So if you do have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat and we'll see it. yeah, the sense that you're not just that expert, that we are actually, yeah, designing something, because we know, don't much people love that ownership of feeling like, yeah, this is, I'm kind of building this together with you. And as you say, build the wall down. I really like that way of seeing it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A great example is that I was working with a global manufacturing organization. And when I originally spoke to the head of technology, he told me that they're verbally given the business to another provider, or another managed service provider. And whilst I respect that decision, I couldn't help notice that there seemed to be more to the conversation. So I invited him to, and his team, to say, hey, let's just do a discovery session. Let's strategize this. Let's look at the bigger picture. And he was open to that. And so we did that with his team and himself. And we began to learn that whilst his incumbent wasn't performing, he had a bigger problem in regards to projects being delayed. He had bigger problems that they've done a lot of acquisitions globally, and they've won a large global tender. And now the technology department had to be centralized. So from initial issues with services in Australia, it started to expand to a global level. It started to move into compliance, risk, and governance, and policies and standardizations. And that all came about when we were able to sit down with the customer and just sort of pick his brain and just try to understand and realize, well, how are you doing this with just two people? Or how are you managing your manufacturing site in Adelaide? Or, what other things that are, rubbing you up the wrong way? And it kind of paints that picture where you can then say, well, now I understand, and this is how we're going to address it. And ultimately, we won the business because we were able to demonstrate that we were able to understand what he was actually wanting. The issues locally was really actually just a small thing, as opposed to the bigger picture. And it often is the case that I've experienced.
Yes, yes. And that's a fantastic example, isn't it?
Mm,
You'd never have got to that point if you weren't able to connect and invite.
correct. Yeah.
It's not inviting a conversation and
Mhm,
not pushing. And while I'm not saying that anyone listening to this
mhm,
chat we're having today is pushy around their selling, sometimes it does happen. We just don't even
mhm,
know we're doing it. And hopefully I've learned not to do it, but it's definitely something that I was very conscious of in the
mhm,
past. And so, yeah, if we can invite that conversation, and I know it's so much a keyword everywhere now, but this curiosity, if we can be curious
mm,
and go into and it's the same with conflict or anything like that, go in with curiosity, it's really going to help.
mm.
Yeah, I'm seeing a comment.
That's a fantastic word,
Yeah,
curiosity.
it is, isn't it? Yes.
Mm,
And I would say mutual understanding is needed. Exactly. It's that
mhm,
mutual aspect, Ivan. I totally agree with you.
mhm,
Because if we don't go in curious, we can either go in closed or
mhm,
certain. And if we're too certain, that's when we start, feeding solutions, which, as you say, and such a
mhm,
great example, that may not actually be the bigger picture and what they really need.
mhm,
So that certainty or being closed off, if we can go in curious, and that can be a mantra word, honestly, I reckon, makes such a difference.
mhm.
And also a
Yeah,
different, yes, no, sorry, go.
no, sorry. I was just going to say, conversely, the opposite, where I've gone into meetings, in my role at Premier Tech, I often worked with the actual accounts team, but obviously previously is sometimes we do have too much to say, and I've often seen where the salesperson has dominated the conversation, assuming that the customer is thinking along these lines. And I've actually observed where the customer has just switched off halfway through the meeting because he's heard it from the other salesperson, he's heard it from the previous before.
Yes.
And afterwards, I would have a chat with the rep and just say, well, how did you think that went? And they will say, oh, that was fantastic. And I said, okay, that's great. But what did you learn from that meeting? And the comments I get back from them is quite general. So it's
Yeah.
nothing really specific as to what they can actually progress the sale forward, or the relationship, or the conversation, or
Yeah.
the issue forward, because they've just assumed that this is the situation. And
Yeah.
I do feel that makes the customer feel that he hasn't been, or her hasn't been heard
Yes.
clearly, and therefore, is that person going to invest more time with you? If that's
Yeah.
the case, then
Yep.
because
Yep.
there's a lot of people fighting for the same business.
Exactly. Exactly. Very well put.
Mm,
And it is, and it's that assumption that can be made, and you go, oh yeah, we assume we are on the same track.
mm,
But again, you don't actually know until you pull back and ask and listen and
mhm,
respond and invite that conversation. And yes, and there's always that classic phrase, and I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, well, when I'm talking, I'm not learning.
mhm,
And boy, have I had to think about that sometimes. I mean, even with my partner, I sometimes have to go, Sarah, just you're talking a lot. Just
mhm.
stop, because you'll learn something really interesting if you just don't talk. Um, so that definitely can help as well. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
so true, isn't it? That whole
Mm.
on the track and not realizing that that's actually what's happening. That's fantastic. Okay, so these are really good examples and great ideas, I think, for anyone interested in this whole aspect, and particularly in IT, of course, because it's so specific as well. I know when I'm working with clients who are in IT, it's a different lens, and there's a lot of different aspects to it. Um, yeah. So, any other thoughts? Any other comments on, showing? I mean, I think you've touched on the fact that there can be fears that you can uncover if you
Mm.
allow that conversation to open out. Yeah. Any more thoughts on the sort of empathy or fear or anything else that you see working
I,
really?
uh, I think once you're able to understand the bigger picture, it
Yeah.
is always great to be able to take the bigger picture and bring it back to that person and
Yes.
understand how is that actually impacting you
Yeah.
in this situation. So,
Yeah.
and then they would be able to articulate it. And then you can come back to the person and say, okay, if I was to address this, when this be the situation, how
Yes.
would that make you feel?
Yeah.
Or what else would you be able to do instead of this? And what that does, I find, is that you really pull that person into the solution that you're putting together, because now they're invested. They're thinking that, right, if this works, then this is going to happen, and I'm going to be able to focus on more strategic or management or leadership skills, as
Yes.
opposed to managing the BAU operational side of things.
Yeah.
Or I could progress my career, or I'm not going to feel so frustrated, or it's
Yeah.
impacting my personal life, and I need a
Yeah.
solution to be able to you know get things back to where it needs to be.
Yes.
And that's how you can relate it back to the actual person. And again, it's a very soft approach because it's all conversational, but you can
Yes.
see how that person is now more warm to engage with you to be able to drive this forward, as
Yeah.
opposed to, often going through the features or the functionalities of the servers and then the cost. That doesn't really, that might address what he's asking for, but
Mm.
you are
Mm.
missing a large percentage that sits behind it.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, there's so much in what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And
Mm,
you miss the whole point. If you're going for the features, it's often a race to the bottom, because then they'll just
mhm,
look at the cheapest provider, won't they?
mhm,
Whereas you can actually go on the benefits and show them. So what it seems to me you're saying then, Hamish, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're almost saying, well, you start zooming. So you start by zooming in on the
mhm,
individual or the people that you're speaking to in the room,
mhm,
and then you zoom out to the bigger picture, whether that's global or
mhm,
Adelaide or whatever's going on in a bigger way, if they want to go there. And then when you've got that, you're zooming back
mhm.
in again to the individual who can then progress
Correct.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a clear way of
Mm,
seeing it. I really
mm,
like that.
mm.
Yeah. And is that something you've learned over time, or you've learned from mistakes, or is that just that's now natural for you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've learned from mistakes, to be honest. Just to be transparent.
Mm,
I feel that sometimes I've gone into meetings where I've been too focused on the person, and there's sometimes I've gone in making assumptions. So I've been on the other side of the fence,
mm,
and I've seen the responses. But being able to I think being able to be more strategic and having that ability to zoom into the details and then pull back to be more holistic and then going back to the detail
Yeah.
allows you to really unpack or uncover topics or areas that you might have missed. And also, it allows the person that's listening to you to realize that you've actually gone above and beyond compared to the other person to truly try to understand not just me, but my organization and the frustrations. And you have a heart for us to be able to be more successful
Yeah.
going forward, as
Yeah.
opposed to like, I'm just trying to make some money. I've got a sell. I mean, I do have a sell as well, but you can
Yeah.
see is a very different approach as opposed to just
Mm.
typical sales,
Yeah.
more
I love
traditional sales, I should say.
more businesses. Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. And what I really love too is that the vocabulary that I'm hearing from you today, which is interesting to me,
mm,
is that, you just use the word heart. You've talked about feeling. How are
mm,
they feeling? You don't often necessarily get a lot of that, particularly in your area.
mhm,
It, how often do you hear the word heart in an IT or sales
mm,
conversation? I not all that often, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe there are lots going on out there
mm.
that I'm not hearing. But yeah, it seems to me that you've got a really good attitude to that. Thinking about that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's. I mean, after initial layer, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a person that sits behind. Has same challenges as me, has to balance the family, the kids, the same problems.
Yeah.
So I do like to try and connect there. Obviously, I need to deliver on the actions and be prompt and a sense of urgency and deliver the services. But
Yes.
I do feel that there's another connection.
Mm. Yeah, I think
Mm.
that's so true. And what you say then about this person, it's a human to human connection. And I will
Mhm.
say a similar thing to anyone who's going into an interview, for example. The interviewer on the other side may seem to have all the power, and I mean, they do, but at the same time, they're just a human. They're also doing their best, and they've also got challenges and kids and whatever's going on in their lives. And I think sometimes this idea of this rapport, which is equal status, if we can feel like we've got that equal status happening, then that's when we do build rapport, we do build relationships, and we build
Mhm.
trust. So look, I think this has been great, and I reckon let's keep it tight. So you don't need to come up with a final thought, but I think my final thought would be from this conversation about, stay curious, be open when you go in,
Mhm.
know that when you start, there's no trust. I loved what you said earlier about
Yeah.
you go in with that feeling there's no trust. And then how do you build that? And I like the zoom out, zoom in. So yeah,
Mhm.
is there anything that you want to say as we finish today, Hamish? Anything you'd like to share?
I think you summarized and you captured it really well with the word curiosity. I think if you go in to a meeting, regardless of the situation, with curiosity, it just positions you really well in regards to how that meeting will progress.
Yes.
Because people can see that you're being sincere
Yes.
in your questioning and the conversation. So I think curiosity, yeah, I think that sums it up very well.
Beautiful. Well, I reckon on that note that I will say that both Hamish and I, obviously, we are on LinkedIn. I don't need to say that part. So if you'd like to DM either of us after this chat, if you want to have a chat with either of us about anything at all, then of course you're very welcome to do so. And otherwise, thank you very much for either coming along live or watching the replay. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Great. Thank you. Bye bye.